Management Group, hosted by Craig Bolanos. Heard Sunday mornings at 10.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Wanted to amplify the latest message from Princess Inksock, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who took to Instagram Live to deliver this message to you out there. Amy.
Non-believers.
Mocking the Green New Deal.
How many years until the world ends again? We have 12 years left to cut emissions by at least 50%.
Don't talk with
if
your mouth.
Not more.
And young lady.
For everyone who wants to make a joke about that, you may laugh, but your grandkids will not. So, understand that the internet documents everything.
Yeah.
And for all those people, you know, you want to talk about looking in the back of history, looking backwards. You look back and you open history books on the civil rights movement,
what happened?
And you see those folks who are protesting against the ability for African Americans and Black Americans to have the right to vote. And they would hold up these bigoted signs, and they would hold up signs that said things like, what about white rights, and like all of this stuff in the 1950s, 1960s. So just know that in the present day, there are a lot of people who hide the fact that their families and that their grandparents fought against principles of equal rights in the United States. Not 100 years ago. Not
how many years is it?
80 years ago.
How many years is it?
But in this generation's lifetime.
We need a number.
So just know.
Yeah, you get it.
She's sitting down she looks like she's sitting next to a dog bowl of some sort. On her knees eating chips.
You who do not sign on to the Green New Deal, you are the same as people who opposed civil rights. You're the same as people who supported Jim Crow. Do you get it? And
she went on to shame us even more.
Yeah, she has a feeling for people like Amy.
People who are trying to mock and delay this moment, I mean, I just feel bad for you. I just pity you for your role in history right now.
But I pity the fool, and I will destroy any man who tries to take what I got.
Mr. AOC, channeling Mr. T, pities the fool. And I'll tell you, this is who has Peggy Noonan opining in the Journal saying, please, Joe Biden, don't run. You cannot withstand AOC, and she's serious. Don't run for president. It won't work. You won't get the nomination. Your loss will cause pain, and not only for you, your defeat will be worse than sudden. It will be poignant because you are not just out of step, you're out of place in the 2019 Democrat Socialist Party. Your very strength, Peggy Noonan writes about Biden, that you enjoy talking about sides, that deep in your heart you see no one as deplorable, will be your weakness. You're not enough of a warrior. You're sweet, you're weak, you're half-daffy, you're meh. The up-and-coming manipulators, Peggy Noonan writes about, which is the more important takeaway from her piece. The more important takeaway is not her wistfulness about Biden. It's about what she has to say about the Democrat Socialist Party. The up-and-coming manipulators for whom it is second nature to feign warmth and outreach, but whose every hug is backed by the sharp and crooked finger of accusation. Their engine is resentment. Their fuel is unearned self-esteem. Their secret is lust for power. That's almost Churchillian. And it's AOC, of whom Peggy Noonan speaks, at least in part. For more on the curious case of Joe Biden's presidential ambitions, we're pleased to be joined again by Freddy Gray, the deputy editor of The Spectator, former literary editor of American Conservative, who's also written a piece on Biden. What's the matter with Joe Biden? Where does one begin? Well, let's start with Freddy. Freddy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Good morning. Great to be with you.
So are you in agreement with Peggy Noonan that Joe Biden's problem really isn't the creepiness that we've obsessed about this week. It's that he has no home in the party that's run by those up-and-coming manipulators Noonan described.
Well, I agree to a certain extent, and I thought that the quote at the end there about the hugging and the lust for power is very true. But I think Biden's problem is that it's not that he's a creep. It's just he's an old phony, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's weird physically and weird as a person. I mean, I don't see it as creepy, but maybe I'm a man and I don't really get it. But I mean, I also as a Brit, I think perhaps I've never really understood why people warm to Biden. I don't understand that kind of good old boy charm.
Well, also, I mean, the funny thing is it's sort of invented, actually. You're right to not understand it because Biden went nowhere when he ran for president in 88. He went nowhere when he ran for president in 08. The only reason there's some good feeling to him is because Obama plucked him from the end of his career and made him vice president. That's the only reason.
Yes. Well, and there was he's got this amazing record of plagiarism too. I don't know if you remember, he got in trouble in the 80s for plagiarizing a British politician called Neil Kinnock, who did a speech about sort of growing up in Wales, and Biden just sort of swapped out Wales for Scranton and put in his own name. So he's an epic fraud. I've always thought, and I think the reason why we have these sort of slightly dreadful AOC characters rising up is that they feel real to people just because the people who came before are so false. And I don't think AOC is a very real or sincere person. I think she's a sort of social media narcissist. But she feels more authentic because the old guard of the Democratic Party are so absurdly fake.
The additional piece on Biden this week, though, is one, the talk about the creepiness. Two, his record that's out of step with where the Democrats are now. You know, this is somebody who voted to ban partial birth abortions. This is somebody who voted for the Iraq War. All that would come back. But also John Solomon, writing over in The Hill, who's done some good investigative work in this area, as has Peter Schweitzer, to whom he refers. Joe Biden intervening, at least in a way that looks inappropriate, in Ukraine to have a top prosecutor in Ukraine terminated, a top prosecutor in Ukraine who was investigating a company on which his son Hunter sits on the board. So here we have sort of the prospect of another bit of a Hillary Clinton, not directly so much like the Clintons did via the foundation, but Biden, again, at least the appearance of impropriety, that he intervened in a way that was beneficial to his son and his son's financial interests.
Well, and I think that there's a lot of very shady stuff around Biden's son's fund and John Kerry's son too. And I think, we are talking about a kind of Democratic elite that is so old and grand, it's almost impossible for it not to be corrupt now. And that's why you have these young guns like AOC making so much noise. Although I bet they'd be pretty quick to be corrupted too, because as we know, power always does corrupt.
Very, very Lord Acton of you. Yes.
Do you think that Joe Biden, though, because of these, women coming forward, there's now 7 saying that he wasn't sexual in nature, but he made them feel uncomfortable. Do you think that he shouldn't even bother running in 2020?
Well, I always thought that his poll lead would evaporate upon contact with reality, and it seems to be evaporating even before that now. I don't see in the current sort of Me Too mania-led Democratic Party, I don't see how he'll survive. But I think he's already got. Who was the name of the woman who he was holding? Who said she didn't mind?
Ash Carter's wife. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. So maybe he'll win a media battle over it, but I can't see how he does. I think it's just they're gonna stop him. He seems to have been ambivalent about standing anyway, and I think he'll back away from this fight pretty quickly.
Speaking of people fighting for their lives, since you're over there across the pond, you want to give us a handle on the ongoing saga that is Brexit with Theresa May willing to fall on the sword, and that's not good enough, and now asking for an extension to June 30?
Well, it's pathetic, isn't it? It's pretty embarrassing. I mean, the only thing I say to Americans is you don't realize how much Brits hate ourselves, so we're actually really enjoying the humiliation on the global stage. But I spent 6 months in the States recently, and I've just come back thinking that this would all be out the way. But it's not, and it's just going to carry on and dominate our conversation forever. And I mean, Americans like to sort of say, your politics is, Trump can be very embarrassing on the international stage as well. But I think the problem with Brexit is nobody knows. It's a sort of riddle that can't be solved, and I think that's why we're going to keep kicking it down the road indefinitely.
He is Freddy Gray, deputy editor of The Spectator, former literary editor of The American Conservative. Check out his latest column at The Spectator. What's the matter with Joe Biden? Freddy, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson.